Welcome, my friends. You are on Mav's Coffee Clarity with Denise DiGrigoli. Every week, I'm spilling the beans. It's a show designed to help you move forward in work, love, and life. And come on, who doesn't need that? If you're a regular listener, welcome back. And if you've just found me, welcome. We interview some fascinating people from all walks of life, well-known to unknown, entrepreneurs, creatives, performers, authors to athletes. And we don't edit because we're fresh ideas. We're authentic, like coffee with a friend. Short formats, 27, 36 minutes, because, hey, we got to get stuff done. But we're here to share life hacks, business intel. To find out more about me and my creative services, please visit DeniseDiGrigoli.com. It'll be in the show notes, but do it after the show, because today on the pod is Susan Keane Baker, an Uber author, empathy educator, widely known as a professional speaker nationally and globally, a notable guru in the healthcare field. You know what I love about her? She's got power-packed knowledge, grace, charisma. A little bit quieter than me. You're going to love her. She's going to be talking about all things author and speaking. If you like it, share it. Thanks for joining us. Here we spill we don't edit. Here we spill the beans. It's fuel to move you forward. Welcome to the pod, Susan Keane Baker.
Fabulous to be with you, Denise. Thank you.
So glad you're here, and so glad you're okay with me being authentic and kind of just tipping up the end of that opening.
Authenticity, so important.
Well, I guess right when we're on stage speaking, these things happen. It's kind of the recovery. So, on the pod, and we kind of talked about it before we started, we bring fresh ideas, like little snippets, creative nuggets, business intel to move people forward. But I want people to get a sense of the depth of your career. You started off as a hospital administrator in a pretty high-level position, then becoming a 5-time author, some published, some self-published, really widely known in some of the best medical institutions in our country. So how does somebody get into that?
How does somebody get into professional speaking?
No. How did you become a hospital administrator? Like, who was Susan before she started?
Well, Susan was second in the most shy category in high school. I would have won, except no one knew who I was. From the age of 11, I wanted to be an assistant administrator of a hospital. I wanted to be responsible for operations. And so I geared my life to that. And
at 11, you knew?
At 11, I knew. And I wanted it so much. And when I accomplished it, it was like being in heaven. Every single day, I couldn't wait to get to work. Unfortunately,
you were like a vice president of a well-known hospital.
Senior vice president. Ultimately, though, when my children were becoming teenagers, I realized one night that I was missing their entire childhood, and I said to my husband, "I need to do something else that will give me more time with them. Otherwise, I'm going to miss everything." And he said, "I think you could be a professional speaker." To which I laughed, having been second in the most shy category. But it turned out okay.
That's something we share in common. I don't think you know this about me. I was also extremely shy till right around 10th grade. So isn't it funny that we're both professional speakers now?
It is.
Weird how that happens. Was it easy to get into speaking? What did you do? And were you becoming an author at the same time? How did those two parallel worlds work?
Well, I know that you know this. It's so important when you set a new goal for yourself that you find other people who are working toward that same goal. Or are already there. And so I found out about the National Speakers Association. They had a chapter in New England, which was about a 3.5-4 hour drive each way for me.
Wow.
But I faithfully went one Saturday a month. I would drive up there, spend the day, and then, just practically fly home with all the ideas that I gained. And that's how it happened. I was somewhat well known in the world of healthcare. I had been chair of the instructional conference committee for the New England Healthcare Assembly. So people who knew that I was transitioning to having my own business were inviting me to speak for them.
Were you afraid to start your own business, having been in that arena for so long as an employee and a pretty high level contributor to society?
I really wasn't. I really wasn't afraid of that. Sometimes you just have to jump in
and learn as you go.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes you were telling me offline before we started, passion and repetition are two of your big anchors. Like, explore that, because people are passionate, but then maybe the flurry burns out. Like, what makes this successful 5-time author. I think at one point you told me you spoke 500 times in a year. I mean, where's that passion refueled?
Well, I think passion is refueled by staying close to what it is that you care about, what you speak about. And if you're not passionate about it, then, do some window shopping of your life. What are you drawn to, even in social media, and see whether there's an opportunity there. But for me, it was always about helping people have happier patients. I mean, basically, if I were to say that, what do you do? I work for people who want happier patients.
And so you made that sort of your life's work, going and speaking and writing about that and helping big organizations really look at their patient care. Became really, really well known at it. So speaking in general, one of the tips you've given me a long time ago is make contact with the back of the room. If you've got 1,000 people, eye contact in the front is important, but start in the back. Tell our audience a little bit more about that, because that's hard to do.
When you see truly elite speakers, they almost always use a tip that I learned from the Communispon company, which is one person, one thought. And it simply means, rather than thinking you're making eye contact as you're scanning across the room, you just fix your eyes on someone else's eyes and you share one thought with them. It may be a complete sentence, it may be half a sentence. And when you shared that thought, now you move to another person in the room. And what you will see as a result of that is people writing on their evaluation forms, I felt as if the speaker was speaking just to me. Now, when you have thousands of people in the room or 1,000 people in the room, you may not have enough time if your presentation is 45 minutes or an hour to reach everyone. So you always start in the back of the room. And this tip comes from Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger?
Mick Jagger.
The guy that's 80 still on stage.
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
I'm going to say it probably works.
And he makes eye contact with the back of the room first, pulls them in, because the people in the front of the room are already engaged.
Because they've got the most expensive tickets for Mick.
Right. Yes, exactly right.
So that's in a presentation you're confident about, the audience wants to hear about. What if you're as a hospital administrator in a panel discussion or a meeting where you're delivering maybe messages people don't want to hear? Are there any tips there?
When you're thinking about people who don't want to be there, you can be as brief as you possibly can, but stories always pull people in, and that's what makes the difference. Now, sometimes people will contact me and they'll say, I have to give this presentation and I don't know what I'm going to say. And one tip that I share with them is go to Google, type in Google Scholar, SCHOLAR, and up will come research. And you can say, I just want published research that's been published in the last year or the last 3 years or forever, and research from all around the world. And suddenly you will have evidence-based information to share.
Wow,
with
now
your
that's a
audience.
business hack I didn't even know about. Google Scholar.
Google Scholar.
Now, is that like AI? Because AI will give you a lot of research, hypothetically, up until 2022.
AI does, I think, a great job with summary. Like you can say, give me 25 something related to your topic. I believe that maybe because it's been around longer, Google Scholar is more robust.
Yes. Yeah. Because it gives you actual dates all over the world, antidotes. Is it free?
Absolutely free. Yes. Great question.
Wow. Yeah. So just Google Scholar.
Google Scholar.
All right, my friends. All right. If that's the only thing you take away from today, that's going to make your presentations more robust. I can see that being very helpful in RFPs.
The other thing I would suggest to somebody who's thinking about speaking, whether or not they're thinking about it as a career or just to further their own career in for their employer or for themselves, is to speak for associations. And I know you speak for a lot of associations. And the key there is that when you're speaking for an association, you may have 40 people in the room, but of those 40, several are thinking, oh my gosh, I need Denise to come to my organization, or I need Denise to speak for my association. So rather than speaking just for organizations. And if you're doing a presentation at your organization, take that presentation to your local association and say, do you need a speaker for the upcoming annual meeting? Because I'd be happy to share how I solved this problem that may be helpful to our other members.
And you said something important to me offline. You said have one topic that you're really passionate about that you present on. And I have several topics. And that always it sort of trips me up, right? Because to different organizations, I talk about different things that I have a lot of experience in. So they seem to know me as the creative person. They seem to know me as the sales negotiation person. They seem to know me as the mindful person. For someone like me, okay, this is a self-serving question now that I have you on the podcast. What would you say if you had different buckets that were almost different audiences? You're straight healthcare, but you've spoken in front of many people.
Yes. So I'm not sure because I'm so tightly niched that I can answer that question for you.
Well, you can because maybe you're a businesswoman as an entrepreneur and you probably give good consulting advice. Would you just get rid of the two that aren't the biggest revenue drivers, or would you keep it because of the passion? Go back to the passion.
I would get rid of two and stick with the niche, but that's just because that's what has worked for me. I'm not saying that's
well, we're not going to come up against your 500 speaking engagements a year and 5 books. So tell me about the books and how they parlayed along your speaking career. Were you writing books and then taking the speaking on the road, or was it sort of happening in tandem?
I would have dreamed of having a book when I was working in the hospital. However, I had no aspirations to do that. However, I was at a National Speakers Association meeting when another speaker said, would you be a reference for me? I want to pitch a book to Josie Bass, which is the Healthcare and Education Division of John Wiley & Son. So I said, of course, I'd be happy to. And I'm on the phone with Andy Pasternak, an editor there. And when we finished our conversation, he said he was going to take that book. And he said, have you ever thought of writing a book? And of course, I nearly fell off my chair and said, I would love to write a book. And so Managing Patient Expectations was published by Josie Bass, and that led to so many speaking engagements because now I wasn't a former hospital senior vice president. Now I'm the author of Managing Patient Expectations. So having a book makes a big difference in terms of how you position yourself to a meeting planner or an association executive who hires.
And does it matter if it's self-published or published, in your opinion?
I think both are great. I think that I don't think any longer there's the distinction of, oh, your book must be better because it's published by a publisher. But publishers, have their own sales mechanisms. You still have to do all of the marketing. The last book that I wrote, which is called Split Second Kindness.
Which is fabulous, by the way.
Thank you.
Because even though I'm not in healthcare, I see huge nuggets in everything you have in that little book.
Well, I've spoken for just wonderful organizations across the country, but one of my favorites is the Ironwood Cancer Center out in the Southwest. And the reason is because they took that little book, and which is just about how to have happier patients, whether you have 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, or 10 seconds. They took that book and created their entire patient experience program around it. And that just is a source of great pride for me.
I love that. And you often quote a few little nuggets out of there. Do you want to share one now, or do you want to share one at the end? Because...
yes, my favorite quotation. If you remember to ask me, I'll remember to share it.
Okay. I will certainly ask you. And that we will point you to SusanBaker.com, where you can find all of her books and a little bit more about her and how to hire her. And you have some courses online, right?
I do.
So now you're evolving. You've got the book. People are designing curriculums and internal management systems around you. What are you doing now to keep it all going? Because that's a lot.
What did I do to keep it all going?
Yes.
Well, one thing that was key was to collect named testimonials right from the beginning. So from the very first speech that I ever gave for a fee, I had a form that just said what I liked best about this presentation, what I would change about this presentation, and any other comments, and a place for someone to sign, and then just a little checkbox that said, check here if I may use your comment, your name, organization, and your comment on my website or in my newsletter. And having that credibility, and also speaking for associations. Again, I know I said it before, but when an association puts you on their program list as faculty, they're already endorsing you. I've received speaking engagements before I've even given the speech for the association.
Yes.
When someone says, oh, she's speaking for the Oklahoma Hospital Association, well, we should have her here.
It's credibility in advance.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
So what do you do with, I've learned in professional speaking as well as in some of the professional performance training I received, that when we have 500 people in the audience and we get 492 great comments, we focus on the 8 that were Mets. What do you do to change that mindset, and what do you do with the 8? This is a hypothetical.
What do you do with the 8? Absolutely. What do you do with the 8? I think I take feedback very, very seriously.
Oh, me too.
And so one time I remember, I'm not even going to tell the joke now because I don't want somebody to be offended, obviously. But I told a joke, and it had something to do with the same religion I am. And believe me, Denise, this was so mild. It was just making a point, and someone wrote that they were offended, and so I never told that joke again. It probably, that may have been the only person, but I take feedback very seriously. So yes, it absolutely destroys me if somebody says, something. I don't mind constructive, but just,
if you hurt someone's feelings inadvertently, I'm the exact same way, because I grew up with my grandmother in family business in the automotive world, and she would always say, if you want to be a success, you absolutely have to make someone else a success first, and the rest will follow. And if you do that one person at a time every day, you're in good shape. So when somebody would give me any kind of constructive criticism, I really have to process it. Never mind if I hurt their feelings and didn't mean to. Mm-hmm. Then I want to have a meeting with them. Have a discussion. Make sure they know that I'm super clean.
So Denise, that means that the next time I want to have a meeting with you, all I have to do is
give me some road comment,
voicemail with a little negative tip,
right,
and say, all right, great, good to know.
Yeah, that's a way to get my attention for sure. Isn't that crazy? So what do you do to continually improve? So people, I think, listen to this like they're stuck or they're in the middle of their career. First of all, I always come from the premise that none of us are broken. Wherever we are, we're meant to be, and we just move forward. But sometimes people get stuck, right? And they're like, I'm not sure I'm staying in this career maybe for the money. I'm staying in it for the benefits. I really want to do my own thing, or I have this aspiration to be a speaker. How do I do it? So what can we tell people that have a decent background in whatever they're in, and they want to be in a transformative position? What can we tell them to move forward? What's the number one thing? I think I know what you're going to say.
You do?
Yeah.
What am I going to say?
You're going to say repetition.
Well, I was thinking of authenticity first.
Okay.
Don't try to be someone else. So you can view great YouTube videos about how to give a great presentation. You can learn from that, but just adapt it. Don't copy someone else, because people can see through that right away.
Right. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes they'll say read documentaries or watch people that you aspire to be. And sometimes you get the idea that you have to be like them, right? Like my alter ego is Cher. Now, could you imagine me as Cher?
Interesting.
Or Lucille Ball. Little bits and pieces, but not,
Exactly.
taking away from who you really are and what you bring to the table.
Right.
That's a great tip. And then, how do you get started? Is it allowing the serendipitous events of someone saying, hey, would you write a book?
I think it's starting to, as we said before, it's starting to put yourself in a place with other people who have the same goal. Mm-hmm. And I think most of the world wants to share. They love to tell you how they did it or how they would do it, and you take it from there.
What was the greatest highlight of your current speaking career from then to now? What was the greatest memory?
Oh, I have so many memories, but I will say that when I was invited the first time to speak at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, I walked around and I kept asking people to take photos. This was the day before the speech. Take photos of me, because I didn't think I would ever be back. And then Mayo Clinic hired me for the next 8 years to come 3 times a year to Rochester.
Wow.
And that every time I went, I just kind of took my breath away.
Super validation.
So, yeah. And what I have learned in life is that the most talented people are almost always, 99% of the time, also the most gracious people. And that was so true there. And it's so true everywhere I go.
What is a gracious person by your definition?
A gracious person is somebody who's just being thoughtful about others. Just always having at the top of mind, how can I make this person's journey a little bit easier, a little bit softer?
Does that wrap into the word empathy?
Oh, it absolutely does. Empathy is your pain in my heart. And
how do we teach that? I find myself being requested for more of those kind of trainings and talks more and more and more. And sometimes I think it's innate. You have to have a certain resting rate. And sometimes I think you can teach it, but to really get it to stick, I find is the challenge. In your work, how do you employ stickability?
Wow. Well, I'm happy to tell you. You didn't know, you don't know the answer to this question, but I worked for a year during the pandemic developing a program that was truly in my heart, and it's about respect for older patients. And so my class is just 30 minutes long. It's a video class that an organization purchases and puts on their learning system, and it takes a deep dive for each person who watches it about what their life is going to be like when they're older.
Wow.
But then it's layered in with 52 weeks of short stories, anecdotes, tips to keep it going. So people have the emotional experience when they view the class. But then
so kind of see yourself there.
See yourself there.
Right.
In a highly emotional way. But then going forward, and some of it's literature, which is kind of funny, but I think it was John Updike who said that literature can just take us to another world. We can be I'm not quoting it exactly now, but a 17-year-old in 18th century Russia when we read a novel. So sometimes it'll just be that story from a novel with questions if a leader is going to have a weekly team meeting and wants to keep respect top of mind.
So grace and empathy, and what would be another skill for a savvy presenter? For an up-and-coming presenter, it's always wonderful to interview people first. So I would often ask my client, is it all right with you if I contact some of your employees of the month, or somebody who won your B award, if B was your B Extraordinary Award, and I'll give you an email to send to make the introduction, that'll interview them. And so when a presentation is about the audience, it resonates for them. And sometimes and if you can't do that. Yeah, I was going to ask, what if you can't do that? Because sometimes that's not always possible.
Not always possible. You arrive as early as you can and you interview people. What do you most hope to get out of this presentation today? What brought you today? And what do you do in this situation? So if I'm going to be speaking, for example, if I'm speaking about difficult people.
Which is another huge topic.
Huge topic. There's an inexhaustible
We need
supply.
a whole podcast just on difficult people.
And I'll say, what's your best tip? And then I'll say, I was speaking with Denise DiGrigoli earlier, and she told me, and now if
you started linking.
If Denise can do it, I guess I can do it, because we're in the same association, or we work for the same organization.
Let's just segue and take a new bean here. What do you do with difficult people? Because they seem to be cropping up more and more and more. And I don't know if that's just because we're out there more and more and more, or if it's a societal change. What do you think it is? Like, where did the difficult people come from, or were they always there? And what do we do?
Well, I think there are 3 reasons people are difficult. And the first is pain. No one gets through life without it. And maybe the pain is manifesting itself in a way that's annoying to us today. Yesterday, it might not have been an issue, but if we're having a bad day, now it's an issue. The second reason people are difficult is because they want something that you have or can give. It's within your control to give it or not, and we both know it. And the third reason that people are difficult comes from David Lieberman, who's a psychotherapist here in Connecticut. And he said that based on his research, the number one reason people are difficult is they think you don't like them. They think you don't like them.
Oh, my God, that's a huge hack.
So likability behaviors, I always say be nice first, because the vast majority of folks are what we call reactive. And if you're nice first to someone, it's tougher for them to act out in ways that make our days more difficult.
So the most common is they think you don't like them, and the solution to that is just be nice first.
Use likability behaviors.
Yep. And in really super challenging, do you have a second go-to there?
Really super challenging, difficult people. It's so... one tip is to just thank the person. So somebody does something, you say you always use the person's name as the first words, because you want them to listen to you, and that gets them to pause. You say,
that's a great tip too.
Mr. Smith, Thank you for telling me.
So I'll give you an example. Like, this is not a difficult person, but to use the person's name. Always when I'm talking to someone, it could be at the healthcare office, could be at the IRS, it could be wherever, right? And somebody needs to help me with something. And they're probably in a position where they might be a little crabby for whatever their reasons are. I say, so I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. And they're going to give you their name like, wow, you're going to tell on me? It's Joanna. And I say, thank you, Joanna. You've been so helpful today. And you can just hear it, right? This is why I love podcasting, because you can hear the smile. You can hear the tone. And I think we react more to that than, of course, we know in professional speaking, 75% of it's body language. But when you can harness the tone first, you're halfway there. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this has been an incredible morning. And I could go to 36 minutes times 2. But I want to just kind of complete our chat today with, you're an author, you're a speaker, you've self-published, you've spoke for some of the best hospitals and organizations in our country. What's up next for Susan Baker?
Well, I guess my mission in life is to help people feel that they matter. And I love the quotation by the late Leo Buscaglia, who said, do you know the wonder of walking into a room and having people happy because you are there? That's the greatest thing.
That is the greatest thing. And I also like that you told me that your legacy is to let everyone know that they matter. You matter, right? You said that to me, like in some of your work, especially your more recent work, just letting people know how they matter just elevates them. And I would go as far as to throw in, would probably change their stress factors, maybe help them lighten their health issues a little bit, right? Just giving people good energy. I think that's where you and I align, right? We really believe that energy and how we use it, whether it's conversational, the written word, the spoken word, is so very important to be inclusive. So I kind of started off with where we first met at the National Speakers Association, right? Helping people understand that they had a voice, they mattered, they had good things to say. So if people want to find you, where can they find you?
So my website is susanbaker.com. On Instagram, I'm susanbaker_com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. And my first words today were, it's a pleasure to be here. And Denise, it's such a pleasure to know you. Thank you.
I'm so thankful for your time today and all of the business and life hacks you've shared and who you are in the world and what you bring to the table. We're going to have a part 2 because we didn't even touch on half of the other things that I wanted to ask you. But listen, my friends, you know what? It's real and authentic here on Mavs Coffee Clarity with Denise. We hope that you've had some things today that you learned that will help you move forward. If you like it, please share it. And if you want to know more about my creative services, go to DeniseDiGrigoli.com. And don't forget to visit SusanBaker.com. It's how we move forward. Fresh ideas, spilling the beans here weekly. Thank you, my friends. Peace out. Mav's got to get back to work.